talent is the topic this morning, and we're going to talk about hiring trends. Yes, hiring trends, not firing or laying off trends, hiring trends. We are grateful for the support of many terrific organizations, and I want to recognize those entities that support our Talent Connect series. If you could go to the next slide, that would be great, just so everyone can get a really good visual on those. And again, these are organizations certainly do amazing work in this region in terms of building their employee base, but really trying to lead in terms of practices around talent, both recruiting, training, and retaining. So Boomi, SEI, Oars Partners, and Vanguard, again, have been tremendous supporters overall of PACT, and particularly on the talent side. Today's conversation, as I mentioned, is in a webinar format, which is why we had a little bit of technical difficulties. However, you can ask questions throughout, so you are muted, but please drop your comments into the chat box. We'll monitor throughout. The panel will go for about 45 minutes, and we'll do Q&A following that. Please look out for any additional comments too in the chat box that may come from our team. Without further ado, let me hand the conversation over to Jeff Lackey. Jeff is the CEO of JKL Advisors. Really appreciate, Jeff, your participation here this morning, and Jeff's going to introduce the panel and the topic. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Dean. Really appreciate it, and thank you for the great honor of being able to moderate this this esteemed panel of individuals. So first off, this is great to be able to talk about the fact that we have hiring trends and strategies within within your business. As a business leader, you're going through a lot of chaos right now, and we're going to be talking about that, how to navigate some of the challenges that you're going to have as a leader going through these times, and what are some effective strategies. So just a little bit about myself. I'm the CEO of JKL Advisors and host of Growing Your Business with People, a podcast dedicated to business leaders. I have over 30 years experience as a people leader and as a leader in talent acquisition and HR. I've led teams to hire over 1 million people in over 70 countries across 8 different industries, including healthcare, aerospace, high tech, and pharmaceuticals. I'm really privileged to have the opportunity to be the moderator for such an amazing and knowledgeable panel. And I'd like to give each one of you an opportunity to introduce yourselves. But we have Lori Remacher, HR executive and startup advisor. We have Jeff Green, president of Expanse HR, and Bill Mussman, senior talent acquisition executive who has global experience. I'm going to start with you, Laura, and then you can pass the ball if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Sure. Thanks so much, Jeff. So I've been the chief people officer at 4 different startups in the Philadelphia area. And about a year ago, almost to the day, I took the plunge to start doing fractional work. So at this point, I am doing fractional chief people officer work for 2 Series A startups, one in Philadelphia, one in New York. And I also serve as an advisor to 3 other startups as well. Let me pass it over to Jeff. Why don't you take it from here?
Thanks, Laura, and good morning, everyone. Jeff Green with Expanse HR. My background, I'd spent several years in a corporate environment as a human resource executive, first in large healthcare systems in the Mid-Atlantic region, and then from there moved over into financial services. After that, the entrepreneurial bug bit, and I realized there were a lot of mid-market organizations that needed professional HR guidance and support. And that was the genesis for our firm, Expanse HR, where we help organizations to kind of find, manage, and develop talented professionals to support their organizations through outsourced HR, advisory services, as well as compensation services. So it's a little bit about me and our firm, and let me pass it on over to you, Bill.
All right, thanks, Jeff. So hi, everyone. My name is Bill Mussman. I've been in the talent acquisition space for over 20 years. Man, it's hard to say that at times. But much like Jeff, Over the last 15 to 20 years, I've been leading large, global talent acquisition teams all over the world, hiring in different industries, different types of skill sets. So lots of experience in helping companies and leaders with strategy. So I really enjoy the coaching, the mentoring that comes along with working with leaders as well as with talent acquisition, recruiters, and helping them hire folks across the globe. Currently in transition, so looking for my next role, but excited to be part of the panel and share some of my experience and best practices. So Jeff, back over to you.
Okay, great. Back to Boston. How about that, right? Where I'm based out of. So thank you so much. These panelists, as you can tell, have a depth of experience that we're going to tap into. So the experts on this panel are going to provide you with examples and stories, not just advice, so that you can find ways to apply what you've learned from experiences. So let me kind of tee up what we're going to talk about today. So this is going to be really, it's kind of the chaos of what we're in. But let's start with what we're trying to do as business leaders. The business of a business leader is to carefully bring people and profit together in harmony. We're looking to make a virtuous cycle that involves building up people who then in turn help grow profits. Honestly, in the past couple of years, we've seen economic turbulence, crashes, surges, mass reductions, mass hiring, and then layoffs and downsizing. We've seen uncertainty and change accelerating, and that's without question. It's a chaotic business environment, to say the least. And we're going to discuss practical ways business and HR leaders can collaborate to not only understand the business market, but also to craft specific strategies that we take from our own book of business, things that we've done in our history that don't have to change every time that we have a shifting economic headwind. So today I'm going to start with one question. And the first one is really talking about the customer, right? You're thinking, well, wait a second, what's the customer have to do with this? Well, you're gonna realize how the customer plays into all this, because ultimately whatever we do has to have an impact on the customer experience. So I've heard a lot about CX, or customer experience. We map out customer journeys. We segment these people into different markets, types, personas, create experiences that maximize both their experience and likelihood to buy more. We measure the experience at every turn and constantly are tweaking the products and services and experiences to help drive them to buy more. We also know that our employees are the ones who are delivering these experiences. Every leader knows that. But did you know that actually research tells us that 40 to 80% of candidates who have a poor experience in the hiring process are likely to abandon the brand for their purchases? What do you think the impact of employees having a negative experience within your company will be? Or let's reverse it. Imagine the empowerment and the horsepower when they have a positive experience within your company. So given this insight, how do we apply the learning that we developed for customer experience to the employee experience and the candidate experience? So let me just throw that out to the panel to start. We'll let kind of have a plural discussion. In terms of the employee experience and candidate experience, where are the ties with the customer experience that you've seen?
Yeah, well, yeah, I'd be happy to start off. As I was listening to you there, Jeff, everything that you just talked about with regards to the customer experience applies to candidates, and I think as leaders of organizations, as leaders of human resources department, it's important to kind of have that shift from the we have our recruitment process and this is how it works, and you, the candidate, kind of funnel through that process. We need to reverse it to some degree and kind of redesign the process to align with the types of individuals that we believe can contribute to our organization. So that's, I think, a good starting point. And as I see Laura and kind of Bill nodding their heads, maybe you could kind of pick up from there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with you, Jeff. I think a lot of it comes down to communication too, and I think that translates a lot, as people leaders, our employees are our customers, they're the customers of what we're doing. And every time I've ever seen a breakdown in a hiring process or a bad candidate experience, it always comes down to communication, whether it's the hiring team isn't aligned and one person's looking for one thing, another person's looking for another, or if just quite literally the company isn't communicating to the candidate. If you are communicating to the candidate and you're keeping a strong line of communication, even when you do have breakdowns on the company side, which happen, they're gonna feel okay, and they're gonna have a better experience than they are if you just leave them sitting in the dark.
Yeah, and Laura, I'll just reinforce that. I'm not sure if many of the folks on the phone are familiar with the talent board, but they just did major research across thousands of companies, and it came back with two things that, but whether it's a candidate or internal employees, they're looking for communication and feedback. And that's huge. And that's something that we can all impact, whether it's the recruiters, the HR team that's providing that information, or if there's a way that you can enable that through technology. But those were the two key factors that most company or most employees or candidates were providing the feedback is not enough communication, and we need better feedback.
That's great. Wow, that's some powerful advice. And what I would say here in insight that I derive from this is that as you think about this for your candidates, think about, are you doing that for your employees today? Because if you're doing those things for your employees, then they're more likely to be reflecting the shadow of the leader and of the people, and they're more likely to naturally do that for your candidates, right? You're going to be designing processes that reflect your culture. So excellent dialogue right there. So let me start with a question that really zooms in on customer experience. And this is really talking about what learnings are we taking from that customer experience and applying it to the candidate experience. So in particular, I know when we talked in preparation for this, we talked about NPS, Net Promoter Score, focus groups, agile development, market segmentation, personas, personalization, right? What are some things, taking it down to the brass tacks, that maybe we've used in the past, and specific examples where we've either used NPS or focus groups or market segmentation or personas to be able to impact that candidate or employee experience?
I'm happy to jump in. I shared previously with you all. I had a situation where I had a marketing manager candidate rec that was open for a very long time. And each time I got to the offer stage, the person declined the offer. And it was a significant, interview process and whatever else. The person seemed really enthused. We'd go to make an offer, the person would decline. And after my third decline, it was like something's amiss here. So I had my recruiting team develop a survey and call, and then we did that moving forward, where it wasn't the recruiter that handled the role, but it was another recruiter who would jump in and just interview the person to go through kind of what was their experience and see what the breakdown was to understand. And moving forward, every person that declined an offer from our company, we did this with, and it was incredibly enlightening. And also, the candidates really appreciated it. Like, we got a lot of feedback saying like, wow, I've never had this before. This is really great. Really appreciate it. And actually we got some really like positive, like Glassdoor reviews on this, that people were, like, hey, I was happy to see that you took the time to understand it. In this specific instance, the breakdown was really a communication issue, as we talked about previously, where the hiring manager and the hiring team were on one page and the CEO was on a different page. So, when it came to that final round interview and he would describe the job, it was a completely different job than the person thought they were interviewing for. And it's interesting, but without having done that, I'm not sure I would have gotten to that. And also we were able to enact processes moving forward where, we were able to make sure everybody was aligned at the beginning of the process, everybody knew what the job was, and we were all, operating as one team.
Thank you very much, Laura. That's excellent. So one of the examples I was going to actually provide was we used Net Promoter Score within one of my previous employers, and so that was great. But we weren't seeing the uptick when we were doing NPS for hiring leaders as much as we wanted. So we started doing hiring leaders and then candidates, and so we did hiring leaders first because it's a smaller population. We thought we could have an impact and figure out how to use NPS. What we learned was that actually, because we originally anonymized the hiring manager's feedback and said, oh, well, this is anonymous, so then we're going to have to protect it. And then we had to do all these gymnastics to try and get them the data, but then keep it from being. And then we said, enough is enough. The hiring managers don't care to have anonymous feedback. They just want to give feedback, right? So we told them we're going to remove the anonymity, right? And it's going to go straight, but now it's going to go straight. The moment you hit send, it's going to hit the recruiter's inbox as well as their manager's inbox every single time. Now, the manager may or may not read it every single time because they get a lot of folks, but they're going to compile it, for periodic, either weekly or monthly reviews with that recruiter to say, hey, I've read through your feedback. This is what I'm seeing. But better yet, the recruiter got it in the moment. And you saw NPS scores skyrocket because they got immediate, specific feedback that they could take action on. Now, not everything was perfect and actionable, but there was enough that we went from about a 40 NPS to somewhere around 82 to 85 NPS for our hiring leaders, over doubling, just because we gave them specific feedback in the moment that they could take action on. Now, we had to figure out a different method because candidate feedback, there's too much of it. There would be too much. So we still had to work on ways of compiling it, so it wasn't quite as immediate. But if you're taking something from this as a leader, make sure that your folks, your team, when they're getting the customer feedback, let them get it as unfiltered as they possibly can, because sometimes it's more effective. They can use it that way. Okay.
Jeff, I'll add, also working in a kind of large global organization, there are tools out there, whether it's your applicant tracking system or third-party tools that you can bolt on that will measure from a recruiting standpoint NPS scores. And that could be an NPS score coming from a candidate, because we would measure not only the person that got hired, but also anybody that was interviewed. And then it also measure the hiring manager satisfaction with the recruiting process as well. So we would look at both of those. But we were hiring, 1,000 people a month. So it was a lot of information. So having a tool to be able to collect that information, to your point, and be able to synthesize it and be able to consolidate it so that way it's meaningful is really helpful.
That's great. Thank you, Bill. Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to move on. This next question, the next topic area is going to be culture. So one of the areas that we talked about offline before in preparation for this section was to talk about culture. How do you go about creating a culture that is supportive and that builds up people? Creating a culture where people are smart, kind, and in which people want to achieve tremendous results. I'd love for you to share with us some ideas. I think Jeff, you and Laura had some specific ideas that you wanted to share on this topic. So Jeff, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. No, thanks, Jeff. Just real quickly, I just wanted to kind of share a situation with a client that we work with that I think will speak to the end result or the dangers of not doing some of the things that you just said. Jeff, I think it would kind of give us a framework to build off of. But frankly, I think that the pandemic really highlighted the importance of what you're talking about, which is that culture enables you to align, I believe, kind of your people with profit. Because one of the things that we saw working with a client that had a large call center organization, their culture was one of a duck and cover. Let me keep my head down, because if I say the wrong thing, management at multiple levels, there will be, you know, negative ramifications. So it was a duck and cover culture. It was an abrasive culture. And it was a us them culture where the call center staff were considered them by leadership. So what happened is, when suddenly shutdown orders came, and then a few laws were quickly enacted. If we could kind of go back to 2020 real quickly, what happened was these call center employees who had the ability to work remotely, but many of them were dealing with children in school, et cetera. The culture of the organization was placing demands on those employees, but now those employees had options to not respond positively. And so the organization struggled to staff their call center. The call center was the heartbeat of the business, and financial performance declined. And over 2 years later, they're still struggling with some of those issues. So I say that, and then want to kind of pivot to the things that an organization and leaders can and should do. Biggest thing is alignment. I think when we talked offline, I talked about the importance of leaders of organizations kind of keeping it really real with themselves and making sure that your culture and the way you engage and interact with employees is aligned with who you are as an organization, what your organization values, because your culture should draw the type of people into it who can support your mission, your vision, and values, whatever those may be. And so being honest with yourself about that, and then recruiting and engaging employees consistent with that, becomes really important.
Excellent. I captured a couple of your thoughts there, Jeff, in the chat for everybody. So I'm going to multitask as moderator and tapper over here. So the other, Laura, I think you had some thoughts on this as well.
No, I do, and I've been really proud of the cultures that I've been able to build, you know, throughout my career, and I just think it's not really that hard. If you hire great people, you treat them fairly, and I use the word fairly, not the word well. I think, of course, you want to treat people well, but you want to be fair, right? You want to be fair and consistent in your approach to everybody. I think the key thing is to train your managers. If you have strong managers who know how to talk to people, you're good. And then lastly, from people ops, check in frequently. To me, it's not a secret sauce. If you're checking in, if your managers know how to handle situations, they want to manage people. Kind of the biggest culture issues I've had in the past are when we promoted people into management who didn't actually want to manage. If you're not interested in that, and you don't want to build people up, you don't want to, kind of take that on, you shouldn't do it, and we, as people leaders, need to recognize that. So I believe that there isn't, it's not a big secret. I think it's actually very easy. You just have to want it. You have to check in, and you have to make sure that your managers are managing.
Excellent point. Wow. Yeah, that's people leaders have time to be people leaders. And so giving them the tools to be effective and make sure they're motivated to be people leaders, really powerful stuff. So I'm going to pivot to internal talent. The most overlooked sometimes of all your talent are the people you have under your own roof, or under your own Zoom meetings, or whatever you want to call them, under your virtual roof, right? Those are the people that you have right there at your fingertips. But so many times, business leaders, we think about, oh, we got to recruit, we have to hire externally. Did we, in the process, in that rush to hire externally, did we actually leave our internal workforce behind? And the question here is, how do we systematically correct for what we believe is an error in strategy? Bill and Jeff Green, I'm going to look to you guys to help with that. So Bill, over to you.
Yeah, so I have to mention, like, I've been doing this a long time, and this is the strangest, weirdest labor market that we've seen, right? There's all these noise in the marketplace about a recession and corporate profits and things of that nature. Yet there are more jobs than there are people. So Jeff, to your point, like you have to look at your internal workforce because those are the people that are there. They know your company, they know your customers, and you have to be able to help support them as they go through that. But in a lot of organizations, at least the last two that I've been in, it's complicated. And you have to be able to help those internal employees, whether they feel comfortable working with their manager to be able to go do that, HR, as they go through it, because it can be complicated. You know, you've got thousands of jobs posted, employees may not always know where to go. So the two approaches that I've seen work really well seem to be you need to have somebody who owns it. Or obviously you want to give the employee the tools to be able to go out there and look at the jobs and have some guidelines and policies that are out there. But in a lot of cases, they need support to go through that. And I think that comes from the combination of a HR team, talent acquisition team, or in one case, one of the organizations I work with, we had a resource management group. And that group was solely responsible for making sure that when people are available and they're looking for things to do, that they have a resource that they can go to. Or you can use a talent acquisition team. The last organization that I just came from, we were building that process to have our talent acquisition team. I'm going to use the term, internal headhunters. So when opportunities would come up, we would have the recruiting team start to look internally to be able to find the resource that will be available. But that's not easy, right? Managers sometimes want to hold on to talent, right? And to Laura's point a little bit earlier about training and making sure there's a culture of exploration when it comes to giving employees the opportunity to look out there are going to be key to be able to go through that. So I definitely feel like it is an overlooked area, and certainly there are a variety of different options, whether you have a TA team or a recruiter that's helping internals, or you have a resource manager group that does that. There are a lot of different options that are available to go do it, but there's definitely a clear opportunity. And I don't care where you go, Gartner, every place else, what are the trends for 2023? It's internal mobility. If it's not number one, it's number two.
Right.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That's really good. Jeff, love to get your thoughts on this.
Sure. Yeah, just kind of adding to what Bill was saying. And I love the fact that everything we're discussing today is really interrelated. We were just talking about culture a few minutes ago. And one thing that I've experienced being a culture killer is when you have internal staff seeing new openings, but those openings are always being filled with external hires. That can be a culture killer and an employee engagement reducer. So a couple of things that I've either implemented or we've worked with clients to do, and one of those things is preparing employees and equipping employees for that next role. Bill, you talked about some managers can be selfish, right, when they've got a good employee and want to teach them, but it's having structured conversations with employees around where do you want to be a year from now, 3 years from now, and not just having that philosophical question, but then building on that to talk about what are the skills and competencies you need to develop, what are the experiences that you need to gain in order to get there. And so what you're doing is you're building in your internal pipeline by equipping and preparing your employees for that next position. And then the result of that, and the larger the organization, you're multiplying the positive impact, because now your retention is higher, employee engagement is improved. There's a flow of inside mobility and path for employees that just has a positive impact across the board.
Okay, fantastic. Wow. Talk about powerful. What is a culture killer? When all the best opportunities are being given to external hires, overlooking our internal teams. That's a quote to take from today's session. Really excellent stuff. Thank you, Jeff, for that. And I think one of the things, specifics that I used to do within my team, we would have quarterly talent reviews. I don't know if you as leaders, are doing this, but you should be reviewing your talent, not just for performance and potential, but you should be looking at engagement, development, growth. What are the opportunities that you're going to need to, how do you prepare them for the future? As a leadership team, you should be talking about your talent and not just your green box talent, right? You should be developing people into green box talent who might be, quote unquote, middle range talent, because those people aren't going to stay there. If you, if you take action on them and develop them, they're going to become green box, in no time. So think about that as you're developing your talent strategies. We did quarterly. Actually, I got it down to monthly. Our leadership team loved them so much that we did 3 hours every month to talk about talent. So you might become addicted once you get started. So just be careful with this one. Yeah. So okay. So talk about, Laura. We'd like to talk about fractional workforce. You talked briefly about this in your intro, and here I'd like to talk a little bit about the fact that we keep on seeing this mass staffing up, and then we have mass layoffs. And then how do we avoid overhiring? And why would you hire a FTE when only maybe you'd need a task done or a specific project done? So talk to us about the fractional workforce, Laura, and what are some of your thoughts about how that can be strategically leveraged?
No, absolutely. And to, take one step back, I look at fractional different than I look at, say, project work or a contractor or something like that. So to me, when you're hiring a contractor, you've got this task, right? And, it's a 6-week, 10-week, whatever you want to call it thing, and it's going to be done. When I think about fractional work, especially when it comes to fractional executives, that is much more a long-term play, in my opinion. And, especially this to me is probably one of the biggest trends that we're seeing in the past year, if not the biggest, which is hiring fractional executives versus either, hiring somebody who's full-time but a little bit lower level, or hiring that executive full-time but not having the breadth of work for them to work on. So, when it comes to fractional, I think it can be a very powerful tool because there are people, and I think, I'll use myself as a great example, who have a lot of learnings and strategy and a lot to give companies that are new, that are growing, that are moving very fast. But that can be done in 6 hours a week, 10 hours a week, 15 hours a week. And there's a lot of other administrative tasks or things that maybe aren't necessarily the highest or best use for that person that can be done by somebody else. And it keeps companies from paying these heavy executive salaries to people and only getting part of what they need out of them. And you can have a fractional executive on board for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. They really truly become part of the team if that's what you're looking for. So, I think HR is a great place for that. I think legal is a great place for that. Finance is also a great place for that as well. There are other marketing, another one that, when your company is small and growing, maybe you want that knowledge and that talent and that expertise, but you don't want to pay the price tag. And fractional work really is kind of, in my opinion, a great way to get there. And it comes with the contracting piece of the try before you buy as well. So if it's not a relationship that works, if it's not something that makes sense, it's very easy to sever that tie.
Laura, that's terrific. What a great advice. You can really augment your staff with a power player who otherwise wouldn't be interested in working for you because there's just not enough there.
Yep. to
occupy them full time, but maybe 10 hours, 15 hours a week, 20 hours a week. I was whenever I started off my consulting organization, I was the head of TA for two mid-sized companies. And I still had time left over at the end of the day, because of the fact that after 30 years, you really understand where things are going to go wrong, where they're going to go right, and how to drive, change with them. And you don't need to go through something that somebody maybe that's earlier in their career have to go through. They don't have the learning yet. Yep. So it's really taking the people with deep experience and applying them and then getting immediate lift for not nearly the price that you'd otherwise have to pay. So really good example there. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
I'm going to just talk real quick. I'm going to skip to another one. I'm going to skip over one of ours and come back to it if we need to, just for time. I'd like to talk, Laura and Jeff, I'd like to talk about what is the shift in mindset required for leaders and managers, right? So there's a mindset shift that we've been talking about where they are now, where are they now versus where do we need them to be to help create that virtuous cycle of people and profit? I think we've touched on some of this, but Laura, do you want to start us off there?
No, I'm happy to. And I think I know we're talking about hiring and not layoffs, but I think we kind of have to talk about the layoffs piece. So, in my opinion, the mindset shift has become very much focused on this, right? Which is, and I'm lucky enough to be supporting companies that are hiring and growing and whatever else. But there's very much a focus on all these great people are getting laid off. We should get this better, stronger, more specific unicorn, go out and find that person. But then there's also this other unfortunate mindset. I want to hire somebody who's still employed. So it's a very kind of interesting dynamic that, I think is very challenging for recruiters this day and age, because there are a lot of really, really talented people that are available to work. And in my opinion, the shifting of the mindset is making it more difficult for those people and those companies to find the match. So, I think it's a step back. Yes, this economy is interesting. It's changing. There are a lot of people available. Let's interview them. Let's take them through our process, and let's do what has worked for us, previously and still, right? So, I think that, I think what's on trend right now is laying off, cutting, doing all of that. And that is what it is. But to me, it doesn't change the way in which you should be bringing people into your organization.
Sorry, I need to unmute myself first. Those are really great insights. I think that, stop trying to hire the purple squirrels, as recruiters term. If you hear that term, that's a recruiting term. That's something that doesn't really exist. Just because, you think the market's available, try to build up the talent within your own organization to develop what's needed. Jeff, I'd love to hear your thoughts on some of this.
Sure. Yeah. One of the things that comes to mind for me, Jeff, is, when you talk about the mindset shift, I think one of the biggest ones, and I've had to go through it myself as a leader, which helps me as I'm working with business leaders in some of the organizations we serve. And that is moving away from that traditional mindset of I'm the employer. I have a job that I'm making available, and you, the candidate, right? Will come and be considered for the job that I have available. So in some ways, it's like we need to shift our mindsets in terms of from that traditional hierarchical. We have the job, we are in control as the employer, we have the power, so to speak, to a dialogue that's more. That's really more of a, dare I say, kind of a partnership focused, a conversational focus. Even when I've often talk not in terms of, this interview I have, but I want to have a conversation with this talented professional so I can learn more about them and the direction they're moving in, and they can learn more about me, whether me as the hiring manager, me, the leader of the organization, and me, the organization itself, so that collectively we could determine if there's alignment. And even in me saying that now, and I have to repeat it for myself at times, it is a significant mindset shift, because the types of folks that we want to be a part of our organizations are the type of individuals who, as I'm experiencing across age ranges, across industries, are individuals who are not looking for a job. so to speak. They're looking to is this the environment within which I can contribute to and I can receive from. And so if you just think about that, and then look at, you know, kind of how your talent acquisition and processes are structured, and thinking about some of the things I just shared and Laura just shared, often you're going to see, ooh, well, maybe we need to change some of how we approach this.
Oh, Jeff, that's great as well. I think plays right into what Laura was saying as well. So it's like resetting your mindset to say, I'm not in a position, I'm not in the catbird seat. I'm not in the position of power. I can't just pick whoever I want, right? I don't, I'm not the Pied Piper just because I play my flute or whatever. That people aren't going to come, right? I'm going to have to work at this. And if I want my best talent, I'm going to have to do things that make their experience really rewarding, reflective of the culture, and allow this to be their first real experience as an employee within the organization. And you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. So this is really their first impression of the company. So,
hey, Jeff, can I just add a quick point to that?
Please.
Just came to mind that what we're talking about here, I would say, spans the entirety of an organization's workforce. It's easy for us to think about, for a high level professional or for a management level position. And I think I shared with the group offline, a client of ours, large client in the warehousing and logistics space, and was talking with their leadership team. Their CEO said their revenue is limited because they cannot hire enough forklift drivers, because the individuals with the skill set to be forklift drivers, maybe from what we used to call kind of those blue collar jobs or unskilled labor, talented individuals, no matter what the role is, have options now. And so I just wanted to kind of throw that in there.
That is cool. That speaks volumes. The people at all levels have options where they didn't have it before, for sure. So I'm going to finish up on a tech note. So we've talked a lot about our ideas and concepts and strategies, and I love that. But a lot of times, what you as leaders on the call are probably looking at is like, how do I facilitate this with technology? How can tech be an enabler? How can it make take some of our willingness to be, how can we be more willing to take chances with tech, and sometimes, succeed and sometimes fail. And I'd say that, some examples out there of tech that, that I've seen that are really cutting edge are, where Paradox actually implement Hire, where you can actually go through Alexa and have a voice application. Obviously, everybody's hearing about Chat GPT. Hired Score using AI to help funnel in candidates from all different sources into your organization and score them based on success factors. And there's tons of them. Bill, can you maybe talk a little bit now about the tech and how that can be an enabler?
Yeah, and this is an area that I really enjoy. And you happen to mention one of the partners that we used, a company called Paradox. And interesting story when we started to look at Paradox and trying to figure out how we use it. And this is a bot that will allow you to automate your interview schedule. And for anybody that's been a recruiter or a coordinator, the interview scheduling process can be really painful. And when we implemented Paradox, it was interesting. And I happen to call it one of my recruiters who have been doing this for a really long time, as we were going through the process and talking to our managers and trying to advocate for what we were doing. And I was like, Bill, how long does it take you to get an interview scheduled? And he was like, probably typically about a week. I have to call, I got to work with the manager, I have to contact the candidate, and then they have to go back and forth. So in some cases, it was taking 5 days. So when we implemented Paradox, I go, Bill, how long now is it taking you to do that interview coordination and scheduling? And it went from 3 to 5 days to 3 to 5 minutes. 3 to 5 minutes, where we were able to, once we had everything loaded in, it took 3 to 5 minutes for that interview to get scheduled. And the amount of time that it saved, that recruiter. So the recruiter experience was good. The candidate experience was really good because they were able to, very quickly pick a time and go. And then the hiring manager experience was really good because they didn't necessarily have to go back and forth. And it was an incredible experience. And we ended up running into a little bit of an issue with Outlook 365 and just some things as far as free and busy time. So, but the initial rollout of that was incredible. I'll share one other quick story of another piece of technology that we use, and that's a tool called JobSync, which allows you to, align applications to like LinkedIn, ZipRecruiter, Indeed, so you can align your application to when you go through, and it's a one-click apply. And same, very, very similar. I had a recruiter who looking for field service, help desk folks across the country. And when we implemented JobSync, her application rate went from, she would get, 5, 10 candidates. The number of applicants that were able to click through, and our click-through rate doubled. Typically around 3 to 5% of your candidates will actually click through and then go apply. Her rate was 10 to 12%. So the ability for her candidates to be able to very quickly apply to the role, and then she would see the increase. And then again, our managers, and I would get unsolicited feedback. Suzanne's doing a great job. She's getting me all of these candidates. And it was because we had implemented this technology. And I'll share, we went through a little of a contract issue and we had to shut it down for about 3 weeks. And the uproar that we have from our recruiters in terms of what happened, my applicants are going down as we go through that. But I will share that does require experimentation. You got to go try. There's a lot of tech that's out there. I will share that it's getting much more mature. So a couple of those companies I had mentioned are good, solid companies that have a good infrastructure and ecosystem. But we definitely had the ability to go test and go through that. So definitely encourage you to be able to, if you have the ability to leverage some of that technology and try it out, some of it is incredibly impactful.
Well, Bill, yeah, you've reflected exactly what my experience has been with technology. I may have gone a little bit crazy because I was, we were hiring 212,000 people by the time I was done within my last organization. I had over 38 different technologies in my TA tech stack, right? And I wouldn't say all of them I was happy with or thrilled with. But the goal for me was to really create that amazing candidate experience, right? And Paradox was one of them. We started them way back whenever they were just an itty bitty 10-person company. Now they're valued at like something like 2.2 billion or something like that, right? We used other partners, and at the end of the day, what we did was the trick was knitting them all together from a systems integration perspective, to say, how do they work together to create an experience? And honestly, we couldn't have jumped to 212,000 hires in a year had we not had a tech stack that could enable that, and it would have been impossible. Yeah.
And one of our philosophies is we're looking at those technologies to fail fast, right? Like get it in, and like if it works, great. If it doesn't work, like let's move on. So you have to measure as you go through that. So yeah.
I'm going to add to that: fail fast and fail cheap. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Q&A. I think that we have a great audience. We have a tremendous number of participants on the call, and I'd love for our moderators here to be able to help those individuals to submit questions. Can you, Charmaine or Hanaya, can you guys maybe advise on how they should go about? Is it through the chat, submit their questions, or will you unmute them?
Yeah, feel free to send your questions right in the chat, and then we can moderate that and bring them up to the panel.
Fantastic. Okay, let's see it. Okay. We'll wait while we wait here. One of the things that please submit your questions. One of the things that I think that all of us have learned quite a bit is that agility is really the name of the game. And I think that, Bill, you kind of touched on it in the fail fast, / fail cheap, right? But it's that it's willing to be able to experiment, learn, change, operationalize it, and continue that iterative process backwards and forwards. This whole big bang, large project, type of mentality is like that's not the way of the world anymore. I mean, you're going to have large projects, but honestly, the smaller, more iterative design and agile design and work is going to be where you're successful. Okay, we got Charlie Wessel here. And the question here is, what has been your experience in using tech tools in support of DE&I initiatives? Excellent, excellent. So I'll leave that to my panelists, and then I'll feel free to chime in.
Yeah, so I mean, I can at least jump in. Same philosophy. There are a lot of diversity, equity, and inclusion, either job boards or tools that are out there. Probably more so job boards than anything else. And there are also a lot of companies out there that will, claim that they can bring, talent forward. So I would just make sure that you do the due diligence in working with those. At least I've seen limited success with some of those job boards in those areas. Generally, it's referrals and working with your maybe affinity groups that really drive a lot of the D&I initiatives that are out there. So just be careful. And if you're looking at the tools that are out there, there are a couple of job boards, and there are also a lot of companies out there that will claim that they have the diversity pool of talent that you're looking for. So you just really need to be able to do your due diligence. But I can't sit here today and claim that what we've identified or I have identified during my path a tool that consistently works.
Okay, very good, Bill. I'm going to jump in on this one because this is a personal area of passion for me. Because I love things that are hard to crack and things that feel impossible. And I also like simple and elegant solutions. And what we developed most recently was what I consider to be a simple, elegant solution to what seemed to be an impossible program was hiring more leaders, diverse leaders into our organization that were especially ethnic minority individuals, right? Minority individuals who would be representative of what we had in the leadership were typically either white male or white female, right? That was almost our entire leadership team. And what we said was, we can't represent our customers when we have a very, single viewpoint. And yet we had tried for years to crack that all the way down. And we started making headway at the executive ranks. Okay, so we made some because we were presenting more candidates. But at the lower levels, at the director and senior director and the first line VP, we were having difficulty. And you know what the first thing we did was, we said the difference between the senior executives and the others was visibility. We were giving plenty of visibility to the senior executives about not only the visibility of the talent pool that of the pipeline was going in for these positions, and the recruiters knew how diverse their pipeline was. But for the lower level positions, because those are higher volume positions, our systems didn't allow them to know if they had a diverse pipeline or not. So our first thing was just create something that helps tell them before they make a hire and before they get too far along the process, if they have a diverse pipeline of candidates within there. And then allows them to check, correct, and redirect to improve it. And then the second thing that I said was, have your recruiters diversify their network every single day. For 30 minutes a day, all of our recruiters actively went out to diversify their network. So if if their network was was of a certain skill set or background, we asked them to go outside that background. If their network was did not have racial and ethnic minority individuals strongly represented in there, we said, you can't hire people if you don't know them, right? That's Captain Obvious speaking, right? And so recruiters, you need to get to know more people that are outside of maybe what your current stovepipe is. And I said, let's see what happens with those two things. Our executive ranks, VP and above, when over 50% of all of our new hires became racial and ethnic minorities. And then at the below level, we jumped it by nearly double in the course of a year. Not because we were doing anything different in terms of the hiring process stayed the same. The level stayed the same, everything else stayed the same. The bar was just the same. But now we actually had people interviewing for and then able to get positions because there was more people represented in the pipeline. Now that's just a captain obvious statement. You think, what's that have to do with technology? Well, it doesn't. It's about your process and your behaviors and your attitude toward this stuff. So that's just mine. I think there's a Q&A here. There was one in here. You mentioned Alexa being used as an AI technology for recruiting. Can you give me more details? This is new to me. So in McHire, it's just very simple. You can literally, go and use Alexa to say, I'd like to apply to, you can find a job and apply to McDonald's through McHire, right? You can also use their chatbot, as Bill was talking, and you can, and we had actually used it. We'd gotten our interview hiring process down to as little as a day, and what that for our frontline workers. And what that involved was essentially letting people know that they actually had an offer in the inbox so quickly, right? Nobody expected to get an application and have an offer same day, right? And so we had to use the chatbot as an outreach to the candidate population, letting them know, hey, you might have a nice surprise in your inbox. Go look it up, go find it. Those types of things are little ways that your technology can help you, and they can really look at a full automated way. I call it my candidate concierge whenever I use that, but that's just one of many ways. Okay, I'm going to turn this over to the team. Any additional answers to the AI question before I go to the next question? And thank you, Chelsea. Okay, next question. I previously worked in an environment where there was an issue of hoarding talent. What would be your advice to turn this culture around? And thank you, Lisa, for this. And thank you previously for Chelsea Griggs for the previous question.
I'll start off on good, Laura. That's all you.
So yeah, and I'm interested to hear what you say as well to this one, Jeff. To me, I think I agree with you. It is a culture issue, and I also think it's a management training issue. Managers should be rewarded and incented to see their people grow, both inside and outside of their org. So success as a manager should be having one of your people or many of your people get promoted within the organization. And if that's up and over, that's great. So there has to be a culture and an incentive and a reward to grow people into roles that make them successful, whether or not it's within your vertical. And if that is the type of organization you can build, then not only you as a manager are you able to kind of see your people grow and see them kind of achieve their best and highest use outside of your org, you're also able to then take people from different orgs into your own org, and then you get the expertise, the talent, and the knowledge of the other orgs within your org as well. So really, if managers see it as a positive and not a negative, that is the best way for you to then create that culture and make that shift.
Right. No, excellent point. I was going to go in that direction and then wrap around it, Laura, kind of building in structure to to promote those incentives. So by that, I mean, every manager's performance review probably does say something about, training and developing your team. But what happens is it's often one of the lower priority measures from a performance standpoint for a manager. It's one of the lower weighted areas. And so from a structural standpoint within the organization, if the growth, development, and advancement of employees is a primary role of the manager, then you want to incent performance by weighting that more highly when you're measuring that manager's performance which then plays into, pay increases in other incentives. So that's a structural piece you would want to build into how you manage performance, how you measure and manage performance to promote that type of behavior. The other thing that comes into play is within an organization, having more than one individual within a department who's kind of responsible for assessing talent. So I've seen in organizations where there may be a group or a team of cross-departmental that's having structured dialogues and making in decision-making ability around promotion and movement of employees. So when that's the case, then Bill, who's over there hoarding all the superstars, Bill, and you don't want them to advance. Well, now this group with responsibility for managing talent within the organization, it's a group that consists of Bill and Jeff and Laura. And so it reduces, if not eliminates, the ability of that manager or that leader who's trying to hoard talent. Last thing I would add to that is, leaders have to be leaders and sometimes have uncomfortable conversations, and it starts at the top. So I've been in organizations and worked with organizations where someone's doing what you're talking about, hoarding talent, and
Yep.
sometimes it takes the CEO, the COO, or whomever the key leader is to call that individual out, because
Yep.
Someone's got to be a keeper of the culture, right?
Mm-hmm. No, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Laura. Go ahead, Laura.
I completely agree with you. And I think there's one other piece that I think is so important too. If you think about the times that you've wanted to hoard someone or you've wanted to keep someone on your team, what's the reason, right? It's because that person gets so much done and you can't imagine life without them, right? So you're like, I need this person to do it. So take a step back and think, if there's strong recruitment at your organization, you're going to be a whole lot more confident letting somebody spread their wings and fly, because you've got confidence that you're going to get somebody who's going to backfill them that's going to be as strong or stronger. So I think that is kind of the other piece here too, is that people tend to hoard talent when there's a fear that they're not going to be able to get somebody to backfill that role. If there's confidence in the recruitment and there's strong recruitment, that fear can sometimes go away.
And one other point, because obviously you want to make sure when you're looking at your talent, like what's in their best interest, what's in the company's best interest, what's in your client's best interest. Mm-hmm. In a lot of cases, but you need to have some guidelines in place. It kind of goes back to the internal mobility discussion that we were talking about earlier, that, all right, listen, if someone's been in place for a year and they've got good performance reviews, you want to make sure that is communicated and those expectations are set through some policies or guidelines, so that way employees know and the managers know these are what the expectations are. If I hit my 12-month or 18-month, whatever the guideline is, that I should be able to have that conversation with my manager about, well, what's next? And it may not be in your department, it may be someplace else.
So I'm going to challenge every single leader on the phone right now. And I guarantee you that this is something that if you do it, you will be glad you did. First off, I bet you every single one of you know who your top salesperson is within your organization, 100%. If you don't, you probably shouldn't be a business leader or CEO, right? You'll be out of business soon and we won't have to worry about this conversation, right? But you know who that is. But wouldn't the person who is your top talent magnet, your top people leader, your most effective people leader, wouldn't that person be almost as important, if not potentially more important than your top salesperson? Do you know who that is? Have you worked with your HR and talent team to identify specific, criteria that looks at success measures and say, we're going to differentiate, we're going to create a diamond club, so to speak, or a president's club for talent that is differentiating and celebrating people who can differentiate in this, so that their peers can recognize who are those people who are excelling and maybe seek to replicate what they're doing, right? That's what there's an opportunity here for us to think about our employees as the vehicle to our customers. And when we think of them in that frame, instead of just employees, they're the vehicle to our customers. They're the hands and feet that we use to interact with our customers. If you think about it from that perspective, That's probably as important, if not more important, than your salesperson winning the salesperson of the year award, right? So anyhow, that's good. So I see some more questions in here. So for organizations where spending is decreasing in 2023, where do you recommend that money be best spent in terms of talent acquisition?
I just live this, Jeff. Since, right now there's an obvious one, right? It's your people. I think that, since, if you look at the budget that I had, 70% of it was my payroll and benefits. And I think if you want to maximize and optimize your spend, make sure you've got the right people and that they're paid appropriately. That's where I would spend my money.
Great, thank you, Bill. Jeff or Laura?
Yeah, basically to jump on what Bill said, making sure that they have a good process in place. I find that there is so much time wasted when there's a poor process in place in terms of recruitment, and the time of people going out talking to the wrong people, not understanding, what the rec really is. I think that there's ways to make sure that you get a good process in place and become efficient with the talent that's there. If the talent there is efficient, then you've got the right people in place, you're going to do well.
Yeah, I would just add to that, echoing a portion of what Bill said, is around that issue of pay, and I don't mean that in terms of, I would say spend wisely, and appropriately, but I think being targeted in how you approach and make decisions around pay, and ends up being a wise spend, because it's an area where, when things are going well, many organizations, even when they do have a compensation structure in place, they're not kind of working the structure and staying in tune with what's going on in the marketplace, and simply put, spend foolishly. So often spending wisely yields results, and I don't want to say also can provide a cost savings, but can help you to be more efficient with your labor cost spend.
Good points. My recommendation is twofold. One is take a look at all your open positions and figure out which ones are actually making your money and which ones aren't, and then do away with the ones that can't make you money. So first and foremost, sometimes organization bloat is real, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's easier to cut a rec than to cut a person, right? So don't hire against positions that you don't need. And then second, and this is that be careful of the yo-yo effect of your talent acquisition, cutting your talent acquisition and growing it. Make sure the structures are there for it to be agile and flexible. But also, if you feel as though this is a temporary downturn, maybe point your TA organization toward we talked about internal. Have them think about internal recruiting and internal mobility, and develop that as a core muscle and strength, and build out processes to improve the internal experience, facilitate internal mobility, and drive the capability of your organization, thereby improving engagement and performance and other things, by just allowing your TA team to focus on a market that's actually much more in your control.
So Jeff, can I just make one point, especially in the first point that you made, is looking at the requisitions that you have open. Mm-hmm. I've seen more wasted spend based on requisitions that were open that maybe somebody didn't need, but the manager felt that they needed to open up the requisition. Maybe they didn't really need them. So it brings up one point we haven't talked about yet, which is either workforce planning, forecast demanding. We do a terrible job of that. Our managers do a terrible job of that, especially when you look at people and profits. What do you need for the next year? What skills do you need? Where are you going to grow? And I think that's an area that is workforce planning right now. It is not easy to do, and there's no better way to waste a recruiter's time by opening up a bunch of requisitions that they really don't need, and they just want to open them up because they want to see what's out there. So I think there are ways that budgets are getting cut, and recruiters need to have real things to work on. And I think that workforce planning, demand planning, and forecasting is a key portion of that.
Very good. That's excellent, Bill. Really good insights there. I'm going to go to, we have, and first of all, I want to say thank you, Jennifer Lynch, for that question. And I think I have one more question here. At times, the success of a candidate who is hired is their soft skills. Yet resumes are all mostly filled with hard skills experience. How do candidates get their soft skills to shine through during the submit process? Selfishly, as a third-party recruiter, that's what I do best when I act as an agent. Okay, thank you. Ed Epstein, thank you for that question. I'm going to turn it over to the panel.
I'm happy to start. And this, I realize this is a little bit unique, but on my own resume, I have my personality assessments, like the different ones I've taken and what my scores were. And I feel like I love assessments in general. And I like when I take them, I'm like, oh yeah, that's me. So I'm always happy to kind of put a link in there to say like, hey, like, on this one, I'm, ENFJ and, yada, yada, yada. And, little things like that. But I think even doing that shows a little bit of personality to add that to your resume, but also it gives people an insight into who you are. The other thing too, that I think we're seeing that's a major trend right now is like the video resumes, video applications, kind of having that like 30-second clip. I think that there's a lot of interesting stuff that can come from that. I also do think that we're still in that stage where it's awkward. And sometimes it's hard, even in that video moment, to have your personality shine through.
That's great. Thank you for that, Laura. And good idea.
I was going to say, Ed, thanks for the question. Ed and I know each other pretty well. The other thing that I know we implemented this at Nielsen, and that is assessments. So as part of the application process, you can have a candidate take a sales assessment, or I'm just using sales because that's what we spent quite a bit of time looking at different tools, tools like Caliber and other ones that help manage or help you with the process when somebody applies, and having them take an assessment, which really does look at some of those behavioral characteristics they're not based on some of the hardcore skills, but they do help you to assess some of those behavioral characteristics. And you design it the right way, it does help you get some insight into the person's soft skills as you go through that. So that's another approach that companies are using. It's a little expensive, but certainly an option that's available to companies to be able to help with those soft skills.
Right. Yeah, I would echo that, Bill. We utilize it, and we have several clients that do as well. We use a tool called PI, the Predictive Index, which is very I like it because it's simple, doesn't take long, and I don't get like a 70-page report that I have no interest in reading through. So I would echo what both you and Laura said in terms of how effective they can the right type of assessment can be. My only caveat, and this is on the employer side, is for the recruiter or hiring manager, how you then wield that information. So I would just jump on my soapbox and say it is, using assessments are great, but they should not be if it doesn't align exactly with the assessment, this is not a good candidate. We got to be mindful of how we use it, but it can be a very helpful tool.
Yeah, definitely have to train your recruiters and your managers, and it has to be one of those things where it's not the go no go decision from that standpoint, but it's used to inform, what are the skills, and then it gives the manager the opportunity during the interview process to probe if you get that information.
Right.
That's great. Boy, that was and we got support in the chat for Predictive Index from a couple individuals. So that's a popular one. Okay, so I got a nice one to wrap us all up here. I think we might have more than one, but we'll see. What are your thoughts on candidates using tech like ChatGPT to automatically generate cover letters and edit resumes based on job descriptions? Talk about like in the moment, like I don't know how much we've even experienced that yet. So you guys tell me what you think.
Well, I'll start off, and I'm laughing because I'm 54 years old, right? And so I'm on IG and I think Facebook, but it just on the personal side of it. So I used to be dogmatic about why in the world would you use some of the social media venues and TikTok. My teenage kids are on TikTok, etc. I've come around because I periodically have to do the self-assessment and say, what did I grow up professionally on, and is that still applicable now? And that within the talent pool, there are many talented individuals who are also out there on TikTok. So go to where the people you want to find are. And so I think it's, again, being wise and specific and targeted about how you use it and what the messaging is. But I think it is an important tool.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, I'm going to say, recruiters beware, right? Because of there, you may be getting, generated content that so a chatbot or something is creating. So I think what it emphasizes is that all of us are going to have to make sure that, listen, candidates, good, bad, or indifferent, the resume, the whatever, the cover letter, those are all pieces of information that you can use to evaluate, do I want to interview the person? But once you get them into the process, they should be able to justify and qualify and quantify everything that they've done. So it just means that our interview processes and the recruiters that are doing the assessments, the managers that are doing the assessments have to be really good at what they're doing to make sure that you're not talking to an imposter. And that's huge, especially offshore, like in India, the imposter syndrome, fraudulent, it's terrible. So I definitely think that with Chat GPT and whatever else is coming next, it just means that all of us are going to have to be really good at assessing talent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And to your point, Bill, with that, I think being very, very diligent as hiring managers once talent comes in the door, right? So, if they are hired, 30, 60, 90 days, like make sure that things make sense and are adding up and that you have the right person in the right job. And to the TikTok piece, I think TikTok's great. Like I love that. And my biggest advice is to make sure that the recruiters that you are putting on TikTok to advertise the jobs are comfortable on TikTok. You want to make sure that you have people that buy into it, like it, are excited about it, and are comfortable with it, because I think the place where you go wrong is when you use a medium that isn't you. And I think that's where things feel inauthentic and it just doesn't feel right. I think it's great, but I just think you want to have the people that are comfortable doing that being the ones that are hosting it.
100%. No, that's good. And the only way I disagree with you, Laura, is it's all the more entertaining when you have somebody who's completely out of their element watching them on TikTok. It's like watching a car wreck, It's like,
you're absolutely right.
It's almost better. Oh, that's terrible. Maybe we can delete that from the recording. I don't know, So thank you guys. Let's see if there's any other questions here. Let's see, more and more corporate videos on social, especially TikTok, HR people. Okay. So I would say, to the Chat GPT, the first thing I'd tell you is candidates beware. Like, Chat GPT is not perfect. And so if you think it's going to write your resume for you, beware, right? Because it might put in all sorts of things that you might not want, and not be as good as you think. It's kind of like having it write your paper for you in college. Be careful of that, right? But then I think eventually it's going to evolve, and it's going to, hopefully it's augmented intelligence that helps us, kind of like Google Maps helps us get places. Hopefully Chat GPT augments our current intelligence to allow us to go further, learn more, delve deeper than we ever were before. So that's my sincere hope. But I am Mr. Optimistic, as one boss called me, Mr. Glass 3/4 full, right? So there I am. The second is TikTok and social media. And I think, Jeff, you nailed it. Like, we need to be there. And the question isn't just being there, it's how are we showing up? And I give an example with one of my clients. They had a perfect value proposition staring them in the face. All of their competitors, therapist to patient ratio was much higher than theirs. But nobody ever advertised that actually happened, right? And so what they did was they didn't realize that, hey, the therapist cares most about creating a therapist patient connection and then seeing outcomes, right? Those are the two things a physical therapist cares most about. Well, we had both of these were achievable within my client organization, but nobody in the industry was highlighting that. So we actually used social media and other methods to do A/B testing to say, would you rather have, basically one advertising was $25,000 signing bonus and another was better therapist patient connection. We ran it on all sorts of social media. And what's nice about social media is you can do that. You can run these ads. And you know what? We got a 2-to-1 performance for the patient therapist connection. So actually, this social media isn't just about getting the word out. It's about fine-tuning what is the word that you're getting out and what is the message that's resonating with your target audiences that you really care about at the end of the day. Because, you know, in HR and TA, you know, one of my bosses used to say, talent acquisition is the sales team of HR, right? And so we have to think like a sales and marketing organization when we're going out there. So there's my pitch for thinking differently. Can't post and pray. I like this, Chelsea. Can't post and pray anymore on social media, but you have to be engaging and know your audience. Excellent. This question, is it possible to get a recording of this? I'll leave that to our hosts here. This has been an excellent session. So I will leave it at that. I'm never going to keep going after I get a compliment. They say walk away after you've won. So I'm going to say thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you to all my panelists for such a wonderful time. And thank you especially to all the participants who had awesome, amazing questions. So really appreciate the time today.
Jeff, Laura, Bill, thank you so much. So insightful. And again, great resources. Appreciate everybody's engagement here and certainly all of our participants. Want to once again thank our sponsors, Boomi, SEI, Oars Partners, and Vanguard. I also want to thank our co-chair of our Talent Connect Advisory Board, who you saw was online here. Hania Sharp Brown is just an incredible resource, an executive at Accenture, and we're grateful for her leadership within our Talent Connect group. If you have an interest in getting more involved, seek us out, send us a note. Shermana Roundtree, you saw, is certainly an individual that you can do that with, as well as my colleague, Krista Yerk. And with that, again, want to recognize our sponsors, but also I think there's another slide here with upcoming events. We have a MedTech series coming up, and I want to highlight our Foundation Breakfast, which is at the end of this month. It is one of our 4 signature events. It supports our foundation, a small effort to really support nonprofits in specific spaces. And this year, it is focused on femtech, recognizing that women's health is a highly underserved space. It is going to be a terrific program, again, at the Fitler Club, 8:30 on February 28th. We'd encourage you to sign up. You'll see a slide here with the team. Again, feel free to reach out. And with that, want to thank everybody for your engagement and look forward to the next program.